welcome everyone. I would like to say hi to everyone here and thanks for attending this panel between agents and promoters. And just so that everybody understand, I just want to make clear that we want everybody to understand what's going on, and if you have any questions, please just raise hands. And we want to have this panel as more interactive, so if there is anything that you want to add or if you want to discuss, you can always just wave your hand like that, and we can try to include you. But yeah, this panel is basically, it was put as a battle between the agents and promoters, but you know, the brilliant idea of Login was that we would have a boxing ring here, and that we would have on one side the agents and on the other side promoters. But we said, okay, we're just gonna sit down and talk. Yeah, what we have here is two worlds. On one side, we have the agents who are doing their best to sell the acts, and on the other side, we have the promoters, which are booking the acts and taking on the risk that if people will buy the tickets. So today we have some brilliant names here to represent the two sides. I think it's a good, first good step is just to make a little round of introductions. I would love if you would just like say a few words, who you are, what you do. And if we start with the agent side, we have here Stefan.
Stefan Juhlin, yes. Co-founder of an agency called Pitch & Smith. Now they started in Stockholm, Sweden. Have had an office in the UK for a long time, but now we're back after COVID in Stockholm again. International booking agency that are doing tours with international acts all over the world, except for North and South America. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Do you want to go next, Chris?
Hello, my name is Cils. I am an agent and senior agent assistant at ATC Live, based in London. Yeah, again, we book all over the world with the exception of North America. Sometimes we do South America, but these days it's quite rare. So, yeah, that's me in a nutshell.
I would say that now we're somewhere in between an agent and a promoter now. Martin, would you introduce yourself?
Oh, Christ. Well, I have done a bit of everything. So, you know, agent, manager, promoter, writer. I'm now a local councillor. Getting towards the end of my career. I officially retire next year. I mean, I'm not actually going to retire, but that's when I get my state pension. You know. So yeah, I've done a bit of everything. Obviously, most well known from working with Glastonbury, The Great Escape. I co-founded Peace Train Festival in Korea, M for Montreal, NH7 festivals in India. So mainly to do with more setting up events and festival. That's what I guess when they write my obituary, it'll be more focusing on that. But I used to be the agent for New Order and the Smiths. So, you know,
brilliant.
Yeah, and a few other bands who weren't quite successful. Yeah.
Nice. And then on the promoter side, Roman.
Hey. Yeah, I'm Roman. I'm a promoter. I'm running an agency called Damn Loud. We're bringing many different acts to the Baltic area, Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania. We're also doing booking in the region, and I run two venues in Tallinn. One is Sveta, part of Live Europe, and recently we opened another small venue under Sveta umbrella, which we don't really advertise. It's like a little secret spot. Yeah, just in the past used to be head of program for Tallinn Music Week, a showcase festival. Probably many of you have visited before. And yeah, that's it.
Nice. And last but not least, Vedran.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. My name is Vedran. I come from Zagreb. I have a company that deals with most of the things connected with the culture, music culture especially. So we run venues, we run festival sites, we have a record label, We have an agency, booking agency for artists. We have a PR service, etc., etc. So a lot of things. And hello again.
Nice. Well, as mentioned before, with booking artists, we're all taking risks. And recently, this has become even harder. So in most cases, the promoters are the ones taking the risks. And, you know, but also in the recent time, the artist fees has gone up and the production costs are up. And in fact, all the costs are up. So, you know, if maybe a good starting question would be, are the tickets selling? Yeah?
I think it depends really. I mean, the ticket sales this year has been a little bit all over the place. I think it's hard to tell what's some bands really lost the momentum during COVID. I think some bands actually gained a lot of momentum during COVID for some reason. I think the established acts are still doing fairly well, even though numbers might have decreased a little bit. But I also think that. Yeah, I think it's somehow hard to judge what the reason is. Obviously, like there's so many tours happening, a lot of artists are trying to make up for lost time. So it's like the competition is definitely there, and also that people don't actually can afford to go to all the shows that they used to do. So you have to pick, and especially with ticket prices increasing a lot for especially the bigger acts. That really, like, we don't have all that money to spend on culture anymore. So yeah, I think that might be.
Martin, you wanted to add something?
Yeah, well, I think we're only really starting to see what the real picture is now, because obviously, because of all the cancellations, rescheduling after COVID, you had this shitload of shows happening, and then. You know, you've had the effects of, you know, one of the effects of COVID was a lot of crew people leaving the industry. And, you know, and recently, of course, with most of the world, certainly in the UK, you know, the price of energy and, you know, so it's a bit of a shitstorm, frankly. So, I mean, I think, and speaking to, you know, senior agents in the UK recently, I mean, the big stuff, is still doing fine. Like Glastonbury put its ticket price up to £350, so about 400 and something euros, and it's still sold out in 20 minutes, you know, 200,000 or 160,000 tickets. But a lot of stuff is suffering, and so one of the things I was told was that if it's an act that appeals to 50-year-olds, they're really suffering. Because they're still basically not partly because of COVID. You know, they're still worried about catching COVID, but also they're all looking at increasing bills, and so they're just going, you know. And as an industry, I think we allowed ticket prices to get too high, and so you're just starting to see that effect now. And of course, I'll pass on in a moment. Is of course it's really tough for the newer bands as well, because they're just looking at. Lots of increased costs. Everything's gone up in cost. You know, exactly. whether it's crew or hiring a van or paying for your gas or, you know. So it's pretty brutal out there at the moment, I would say. But we're only really seeing it now. Most people I know are predicting next year to be pretty awful.
Yeah, ticket sales are kind of gross at the moment, so to speak. I'm finding some tours that I've worked on. Those artists were comfortably selling out the same level of shows back in 2019. So some of the agents thought they were playing it safe by sort of going back to the same capacities and finding out that actually they should have gone smaller, which is a real shame and probably a knock on the artist's ego as well. And I'm finding that a lot of the artists are wanting to find out more about what marketing is going into the touring now, because it's like, well, why haven't we sold out these shows when we were selling them out last time? What marketing are you doing? And those are sort of questions I never used to received from management or the artist, and I'm finding that I am contacting promoters more to get more of breakdowns of marketing and where the costs are going and who it's targeted at. Obviously, if you've got your arena shows, they tend to do quite well. You know, your Billie Eilishes and stuff like that, they comfortably sell out in minutes. But I guess the sort of baby bands or the bands in the middle, yeah, they're suffering quite a bit in terms of ticket sales. So yeah, it's kind of scary a little bit, and I can't imagine next year is going to be any better just because of how much is going on. I think more people are just saving their money for festivals than going to standalones, because when you think about, you're getting more of your money's worth if you're at a festival. You know, you're camping, you're with your friends, you get to see maybe 10 of your favorite artists at once, instead of, you know, I'll spend a quarter of that festival ticket price to go and see one artist. So that's what I'm finding. I don't know about anyone else.
Roman?
Yeah, I think it's been hit or miss. As Stefan said, it's just like some of the acts you would have expected to sell out are not selling, and then some, like not random, but like smaller acts you wouldn't expect to sell that much are doing very well. What happened in our market is that like there are many different companies that are doing different things, and we ended up with having shows more or less every day in big amounts. There are big touring bands, there are smaller touring bands, there are local bands. So like a local music fan in the region would have to spend a few €1,000 a month to see all these bands he wants to see, but obviously no one has this money. Inflation has been pretty crazy, so the overall situation is, yeah, it's pretty bad for everyone, for the acts and for the promoters and for venues. So I don't know. I'm confused. I'm very confused. The more I do it, the less I understand.
Well, if these people say it's hard, then you can imagine how it is in Croatia. That is a really small country that lost a lot of people in the last 5 years who left for the better life. And actually those are the people that we work with, target audience, like young people who are capable to work, who have will to do something. So it's really impossible at the moment. I mean, market doesn't exist, and the ticket sales are not good enough. And even with the ticket sales, we do everything by ourselves. So we do the bars, we do the sponsorship, we do applications, and when you get all this, it's still not enough. So in my experience, and I do at least 4 shows a week for ticket sales, the only way that we can go through this crisis after a pandemic that is quite huge and left a lot of consequences is working hard with the artists directly and explaining them, like, we will do our best, but you have to also have understanding and be like flexible with the costs and the fees, and actually you have to play for much less than you want. This is the only way that we can go, and this is how it is at the moment.
Maybe back at you, Vedran. As a sub-question, can you explain a little bit of a difference between now and 2019? Let's say the festival season that just happened and 2019. How, like, what is the experience?
The experience is there is much less people at the shows because what people were thinking and hoping that after 2 years of pandemic, the people will be willing, like, to go for the live shows. It was an illusion because people changed their habits, unfortunately, not in the good way for us. So Croatia is, the big shows can work out for people more older than 40. So the sold out shows that we saw recently were like The Cure, Sting, Kiss, Iron Maiden. You know, for the new bands, it's quite hard. It's quite impossible. Really good known bands in Europe cannot sell more than 100 tickets. If it's not summer season and festival season where a lot of people come for holiday. This is how we did it with people from England, promoters and partners, that we did some great things. And we booked many artists, but if they depended on local people, we could never do it. So this is the situation at the moment.
Maybe a question for Martin. is there a difference in the tipping point that happened, you know, from pre-pandemic and now? Is there like the break-even point has changed? Is that
Again, we're only really starting to see what the real situation is, you know. But I mean, unfortunately, we were talking last time we were going to try and make this positive. We're all
Wait, we will end with positive.
You know, so there's not, you know, there's a very, at the moment there's currently an unhealthy, you know, it's almost every bit you look at is not in a great situation, and people are haven't got used to it, and you know, and I think you mentioned about people getting out of the habit, you know, I think that's a real danger of, I mean, again, people just, you know, because it used to be part of you, and certainly in the UK, you know, it's part of your normal life is going to at least one festival. Most people probably went to about 3, you know, and then we'd go to the O2 to see whatever, you know, and now they're going, well, actually, you know, that trip to the O2 is the big arena in London, you know, well, your average show there, what costs about £80 for a ticket, and add on your train ticket, add on your meal, and people just going, you know what, I'll kind of give that a miss. So, you know, so I think, you know, as an industry, you almost have to go back to the basics, you know, like you almost have to rebuild up your new community. But that's going to take a bit of time, and there'll be some casualties out there, and that's the truth of the matter. But, you know, bands, you know, good bands who work hard or whatever, keep their, you know, will obviously look at all their costs. So there are things you can do, because people just got too, you know, it's like, I mean, I used to manage bands and go on the road with 6 crew. Well, you know, you go, well, actually, do I really need that? You know, do I need a guitar tech when I can carry my own guitar on stage? And, you know, you come down to real nuts and bolt things like that, you know. And obviously, as a promoter, in whatever country, you had to sort of build up, you know, really find your audience and build it up, because it was too easy for a while. You know, you just put a show up and that was it. So, you know, and you can't do it, you know. And I'm old enough that I remember when it was fucking hard. You know, I used to book tours before fax machines. You know, it wasn't. Yeah, you know, it wasn't. There weren't that many places you could play in Europe. You know, but we did it. Yeah.
I actually have the same question for Roman. Like, how do you see, because obviously Glastonbury is a very different situation than Svetabar. How do you see the tipping point? Is this changing since, yeah?
Well, it's obviously has changed because costs have increased, so obviously the break-even point also went up. Well, you know, people want more money for their work, technicians, electricity bills are just up the roof. So yeah, we have to put higher venue rent price, we have to pay people more, we have to, you know, even like fulfilling the rider, the food has grown in price. So like catering and hospitality is also almost doubled now. So yeah, I think that's really what I found myself doing is like there's always this constant fight between, you know, what guarantee we should have and what's the break even, and the bands want more money, agent wants more money, we can pay that much, you know, there's many shows and competition is big. So it's quite hard sometimes to find this balance. But lately I've been doing agreements on the terms of like, you know, if we cannot find this balance, bands want 5,000 euros, we can offer 2,000 euro. That's it. We just started doing the agreements in terms of like, we agree with bands on certain marketing budgets, marketing activities, and saying, you know, if you are so sure you're selling out, just take 80% of what we sell. If you are so confident in your band, then let's do this deal. We do certain marketing activities and we just see how many tickets we sell and what's the profits of it. And these deals been lately quite popular in our area, I think, with many bands and many agencies. And I see this is maybe the way out of situation, you know. Otherwise, we'll have promoters going bankrupt or bands making not enough money. But this is kind of like, you know, it is what it is. And we just carry on for some time and just hope it will somehow go back to normal in the future, you know.
Okay, and how are the artists doing? This is maybe a question for the agents. Like, yeah, I mean, are they still able to tour? How is, you know, how has the landscape changed? Like, there's so many different factors that you also need to include when you're like doing this right now.
I mean, the artist can definitely afford to tour. I definitely think so, and I think there is an understanding from the artist as well that they do understand that they need to be a little bit more cost effective when they do their touring, and that's also a responsibility for us as agents to have that sort of open conversation, both with the promoters but also the artists, just be a little bit more open-minded rather than being the bulldogs that just chasing the highest fees all the time. And I think my experience so far from the artists that we work with is that there is an understanding from the artists on this side of things, and they're still willing, because there are other sources of income by touring as well. You have the merchandise and you have so there is definitely possibilities of making money. You might make a little bit less, but I think it's still worthwhile for them doing it. It's still an income for them. It's not like that's I mean, artists do, some artists, the smaller bands do suffer a lot because they actually lose money on touring, but for the established acts, there's definitely still money in there. But I think it's also like, as Martin has been saying several times, I think we're only seeing the start of this now. Like, just the ticket prices that we've seen this year is ridiculous for some shows, and I think this is something that needs to be discussed even more. Like, you can't charge like between 50 and 100 euros for a 1,000 capacity show with a band that basically maybe might not even sell out. So that's also like in terms of like the ticket sales is also affected by this, of course.
Cils, is it like, maybe are the artists actually able to also make good profit right now, or can they live with the earnings just by, you know, touring? Is this still a thing?
I think it depends, because a few of the artists kind of just like, okay, how do we make this tour work? We want to tour, you know, our album's out, whatever, we need to get out there. So a lot of bands I'm finding are not touring with tour managers anymore, and they're just TMing the shows themselves, which works sometimes. And then some of the artists, I'm like, you have the worst admin skills. I don't know how you're going to be able to TM the show, but I guess they make it work. But touching on something.
So TM is a tour.
Oh, tour manager, sorry, as in TM, tour managing. But I'm also finding a lot of artists are cancelling shows due to mental health issues as well, which, you know, touring has become a lot difficult. I guess it's a lot more draining for them. You know, maybe, you know, they're doing tours where it hasn't, the shows haven't sold very well. So like the sort of energy that they might get from a sold out show, like the crowd, and like, oh, I love this, I want to do this more and more. It's different now, you know, like it's a bit bittersweet, so to speak. So they're just like, why am I, because touring's not easy, you know, like I'm not an artist, but I'm exhausted after going to see one of my bands play in a different country. I'm like, oh, I'm knackered. How do you guys do this for like 2 weeks straight, you know? So I think, yeah, their mental health is suffering quite a bit. And just touching on how they make it work financially, I guess a lot more merch is being sold now. I think a lot of artists are pushing their merch a lot more. They're like, you know, when I go to shows, I see artists talking about, you know, selling merch, like, we've got merch at the back, please go buy a t-shirt, you know, and stuff like that. And some artists have actually come out all right from a tour that hasn't sold well, just because, you know, the fans have actually bought the t-shirts or bought the badges and whatnot. So there are ways to kind of make it work. But yeah, it's definitely not as easy as it used to be, I think.
maybe a question for you all, if you have any good examples of from the last year, like concretely, like a story that happened you want to share?
What story on? What story exactly? On
What
this
story
subject,
exactly?
yeah.
With artists, touring, booking, you know, like, was there a change in the approach that happened in the last year? Like, did the artists react differently? Did the
Definitely.
booker?
In my opinion, hello. In my opinion, definitely. In my experience, the artists who usually charge a lot of money or more bigger fees, they accepted to play during pandemic or during restriction for much less, and because it was the only way. And I mean, it's logical. It's really hard at the moment, but how we can go through if we work harder, you know, if we do some more effort, because there is a certain damage that has been done and things need to be fixed. So this is the only way, I think. We would all love to get a bit sponsorship and money coming from the sky, but just this is not happening, especially in the poor country that where we live in. And so yes, there were many special deals done during the last year in my experience.
All right. I mean, this is actually a good starting point also to, you know, there's a very big difference, let's say, between one side of Europe and the other side of Europe. You know, on one side of Europe, the agents can pick to which venue they want to pitch their acts in one single city. On the other side of Europe, the visitors are willing to travel 400 kilometers to see a show in 3 countries abroad. And then they're going to travel the same night back. So, you know, this is really kind of like, you know, it's really 2 different worlds in a sense. So maybe Vedran, do you see this also happening in Croatia? How does that feel?
Of course, I mean, this is all happening, you know. Problem is that besides all this, besides the pandemic crisis and big inflation, the problem is that live shows are maybe not so much interesting to younger people as they were used to be, because as I said, a lot of times during the last 2 years, the new live experience is experienced from the screen for the new generations. So this is also what makes it harder at live shows. And especially with the rapid progress of technology, so this is why people change their habits, people are more socialized. I, for example, run a small venue that is like Croatian CBGB. It's a really small venue that exists for 50 years in Zagreb. There were a lot of shows, and in this venue, the fetish was that you go in the mass of people, you know. Nowadays, people don't like this. People, because of the pandemic, and they are being socialized, and they stayed at home. Everybody has Netflix or whatever, you know, so it really makes it harder. I see people rather staying at home than going out and socialize and going to the live shows. So in that venue, for example, there were bands that were really important, bands like Shoot Cup, Killdozer, White Zombie played in front of 35 people. Today, it's impossible. Like, it just is not going to happen.
I think that there's an interesting point about venue there and people's changing attitudes. So obviously I'm of an age when, you know, I liked going to shitty clubs where your foot stuck to the floor and, you know, it was...
We all love that.
Yeah. But, you know, and there's a big movement to try and keep venues alive, because the smaller venues are all struggling for all the reasons talked about. But you actually go, actually a lot of them actually aren't very good, you know, and it's sort of, and, you know, that same, it's not the same, I don't think, you know. I also think it's the most boring, current music is the most boring it's ever been, which is, people don't really like to talk about, you know. So, you need to treat things different. I mean, things change, you can't expect, you know, did I make a sensible point there?
Yeah. Roman, how is it, for example, Tallinn is so close by to Helsinki? Do you see this? Can you feel this? Is this more this year than it was, let's say, 2019?
Well, Tallinn is actually quite a small place, and like the amount of emails, you know, like, oh, this act is selling out, Berlin, London, Paris, will be the same in Tallinn. No. Estonia is a country with 1 million people. Tallinn is 400,000. People are not super rich, so we cannot have the same numbers for these big cities, European mainland cities, and Tallinn. So it's also quite hard for us. But I think if we talk about traveling to shows, like the tourists that don't go to Finland actually do very well in Estonia, especially if we put some marketing budgets on that. People would travel. Also the same because we covered the whole region, Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania. If we do a show in Lithuania, we put some marketing money on neighboring countries, and people do travel, yes.
So, do you get like Finnish people traveling to Estonia to see shows?
Yeah, a lot.
Awesome, nice. And yeah, maybe for the agents also, like, I mean, how do you see this difference between the two worlds? From the two sides of Europe. I mean, is one easier to work than the other? Like, how is the decision making there?
I think what we see, I mean, when it comes to touring, I think it used to be a lot easier to tour in Germany, for example, or tour in the UK. Like you could always book a UK tour of 10 dates, and so. But where you see like a difference there, that's also in terms of cost for the artist, that you don't make a lot of money in the UK unless you're at a certain level. That you see a different way of for us as agents, the way we do the routings now is slightly different, that you try to make it more efficient in that sense. But I think that also like working in this area around here with tours here, I think there is still, I think a lot of artists are more intrigued in like finding new markets rather than always going back to the same ones like they used to do, that they always just tour France, Germany, Benelux, UK and Scandinavia, but where you actually you need to change it up a little bit by exploring new markets and see if you can start building an audience there rather than just going for the safe cards all the time, which I think is a good thing.
Give an example of this is Enter Shikari. If you know the band, they happen to be friends of mine, but they've always been, they're a very hard-working band, but also they've always been interested in different markets. So they've been to Russia a few times, and things like that, and I've seen them in, I can't remember, about 3 different Eastern, and they're now really, so they're actually quite a popular band in these what would be called secondary markets, because they put the work in, and they had the right attitude, even basic shit like walking on the stage and learning enough of the local language to say, hello to the audience, and they get the benefits from that now. So they have that solid following through.
Cils?
Yeah, just touching on the new markets thing, I think, that's a valid point, because one of my tours, the new markets that we went to were the shows that actually sold out. And in terms of fans traveling, I'm a K-pop fan, so like that has always been quite normal to see like K-pop fans travel from like, I don't know, they might be based in the UK and then their favorite K-pop artist is playing in Spain, so they're gonna go there. Like, myself included, I've done that quite a few times. So I found, speaking to fans of like one of my bands, they were just like, oh, we're not even from like the city, we're actually from, I think I was in Hungary, in Budapest, and I had a band play there. And I was talking to some of the fans, and they were like, oh, we're from Slovakia, which is only a train ride away to get into Budapest. But, the commitment that I think the European fans have in terms of traveling, especially in K-pop, is still there. But in terms of the UK, I find that the UK audience are not traveling as much as they would used to. If it's in close proximity, they might go. But, for example, if your favorite band's playing in Manchester and you're based in London, it's quite rare that you're going to go to that Manchester show now, I find.
You're more likely to fly to Croatia.
Yeah.
Than go from,
So,
Liverpool to Manchester.
so yeah, that's what I'm finding.
Great. Yes, thanks. Do we have any agents, bookers, promoters here in the audience? Do you have any questions? Do you want to pitch in? Do you have a story to share? can't see nothing. Right. No? Okay, good, good. All right. Sorry? No? But yeah, okay, but how do we see next season? What's coming up? How do we see the summer of 2023? Are we excited? Or is it going to be more of the same?
I don't know. I mean, maybe another war or something. For us, it's the same. You know, we started in Croatia in '91 when there was a war. Nothing existed. So this is good thing, you know, positive. That if you want to do it, you will do it. So we didn't have clubs, we didn't have venues, we didn't have festival sites, and we are still here. So there was economic recession now, there was COVID now, there is Third World War, maybe whatever. So, but if you love this, what you are doing, this is the message, then you will do it somehow in the end. Of course, especially from the area that we live in, you need to put much more efforts to like show some results in the end. You have to work 3 times more. Also, it's much easier to compare. For example, it's much easier, of course, for the band from the UK to play in Croatia or ex-Yugoslavia than vice versa. For Croatian band, it's also almost impossible. So, but still, you know, there are bands, there are really good bands. It's mostly their hobby, so they need another work. And they go on tour when they have holidays or whatever, and they ask boss, can they get a free Thursday to have a longer weekend for like a couple of shows connected. This is our reality. But if you love it, you can still do it. I mean, I'm here. Okay, maybe I don't play with the band anymore because this was the idea. All of us wanted to be pop stars like on the stage. You know, now we run venues and do a lot of shitty work. The problem maybe, another problem, is that there is maybe not enough time to do everything. So I think today the biggest luxury is time, to have enough time. Because to survive, before it was easier, you put ticket sales, you put some posters on, and then there is the show, band on the stage, and there is the bar, that's it. Nowadays you have to do like pre-time preparation, just promotions, all these social platforms and networks, if you want to do them all, yeah, it's much more work than it used to be, and it's definitely important in this situation when you need to put more efforts, like in this time, and you don't have enough time. So, but still you can do it. We are here, and for example, PIN is getting better and better. There are better bands, there are more bands, yeah, but I think it wouldn't happen if there was no money from somewhere, like from European community or whatever. This is the reality. So ticket sales are not enough anymore. You have to do many more things to get the money to make the show running.
Roman, maybe your take on 2023?
I think I found myself saying more no to things. The shows I would like, you know, say yes, okay, let's do it. It's like in a half year. Definitely there is more planning going on for things like, you know, now we talk with, you know, other agencies. Maybe, you know, oh, you're having this act in June, so I'm not going to book this now. So there's more communication going on locally between promoters, which is a good thing, for sure. I think we need to a little bit free up the market because this is just too much. The amount of shows is just insane, and if we go on like this, no one's gonna win in the end. So I don't know. I don't think the future is really bright. But as I said to you, like, or as we all say, we're still in there doing this thing, and. For example, we just decided we're going to open another new place in Tallinn. Everything is shit, awesome. But this shit is the future, you know?
Oh, yeah, nice. Cils?
I think I said to you yesterday or the day before, I was like, I've forgotten about 23 already. I'm like, 2024 is going to be the year, you know? I'm already over 23 because you know, there's still so much happening, and everyone's spoilt for choice, and there's quite a lot of similar things happening as well. Like, you've got so many similar artists, so you're only really going to choose one if, you know, your money's limited, or you're only like going to go out for like once a month or something. So yeah, Yeah, I'm team 2024. I'm ready for that. Can't wait. Yeah.
Nice. Next year. Martin?
Well, one thing is, generally speaking, people in the live music industry are pretty resourceful because, otherwise you don't survive. So obviously next year will be a bit shit and there are going to be casualties. But there's always a positive from these things. So a lot of the wankers are going to go out of business or have to get a different job. So that's a good thing, If your festival's not really good, you're probably not going to survive. Well, in the moment, there's arguably, I would say, there's too many festivals, So the good shit survives and comes through it.
Let's hope so. I also hope so.
Yeah, I was actually thinking about exactly the same thing, that it feels like, I remember I had this conversation at ILMC earlier this year, also like that it felt like that was one of the first events I went to again when things went, you were allowed to start seeing each other again, but it felt like all the good people were there, and the people that were only in it for the money or for whatever reason, they're gone now because there have been 2 years of absolutely no business, which is and like this whole industry is driven by passion and like a lot of passionate people, and that's also why it will survive. It will definitely survive. It's just a matter of being a little bit creative, and like most of us started it's like a DIY business. Like we all started because we wanted to do it, and we made it with like absolutely nothing. And I think. And also that's what most of the artists are coming from as well. Like they're used to doing things by themselves, because and that's also what it takes to get somewhere. And I think the good stuff, as you said, like the good stuff will hopefully still be there unless there's another disaster of some sort, which I'm sure there will be. But but I think by the end of it, like maybe we should look at 2024 and just hope that 2023 goes all right. But I'm still fairly positive that everything will be fine.
Thanks. One more time, any questions? Yes, there's a question.
Can I ask you? Oh, okay. So can I ask you, what will be your advice from each point of view as agent, managers, event organizers, for artists who are already famous in their country, they have following and stuff, but they want to expand their audience abroad in these shitty upcoming years we're expecting?
We're really inspiring for the artists, I see. Who wants to take this one? Who wants to start? Yeah.
Well, I can start. I mean, because we're at a showcase festival, effectively, and obviously I, helped set up the Great Escape in the UK. So you kind of get these discussions about, are they worth doing, not worth doing, da-da-da. And of course, unless you're lucky that you come from a country that has money available from your export office, it's a major decision to make. So I think, yes, they are worth doing, but you have to be really careful about the event you go to and how you work that event. And when you do it, and do the thing in advance. So one advice I always give people is actually really your manager, or if you're a self-managed band, one of you should go to the event, whether that's a Great Escape or South by Southwest or whatever. Go to the event before, the year before the band does, so you know which venue you're going to play in, and okay, that's what I need to do the networking properly. And one of my reasons I'm back here this year is because this event I really like. Part of the attraction is because it's all in the same venue, and you just need to go out into the delegates bar. You meet everyone here. Well, that's not always the case at a lot of these other events. That's my advice for today.
Can I add to this question a little bit? I'm actually curious, are we afraid about the future headliners? Because if the 2023 is still not going to be as good as in the past, are we still developing enough artists that 2024, 2025 will have enough new, fresh headliners?
We'll see. We will see. I think so, yes. What I wanted to say in my experience again, maybe showcase festivals, okay. If the band is successful, you said, in their country, but want to go outside, abroad. That was the question. Maybe agents are not the best contact because they are into their percentage, and if you are not known in their country, probably they will say no. Also, writing to the venues directly can be maybe not so good because they have a lot of emails and the offers. In my experience, I worked with a band, so I had a band that played most of the Europe, and we were like from Croatia, unknown, and we played all around because I contacted the bands, or they contacted us, and I did the shows for them, and they did the shows for us, or they invited us to like play together, and they had the same status in their country as we had in our own country. So I think this is the basic, and I think this is the real spirit of rock and roll. You meet the guys and you go to the party and you like make a deal that is like based not on business. Maybe it will happen one day, but don't have big expectations and be ready to, if you want to get something, you have to give something. Yeah, this is the formula, I think. This is what I wanted to say. Thank you.
If we talk about the future, just remember, you asked for a funny story. I've got a funny story.
Do it.
We're just talking with my friend Luke a few weeks ago, and then we're hosting this rave at Sveta, the dance party with all these fashionable kids who are 20, 21, all these ravey clothes, going crazy at night, And then we thought, why they never show up for live gigs? And we discovered these fucking kids, they haven't been to a live show in their life, They are before they were 17, 18, they were not allowed, whatever the age limit. Then 18 to 20, they just sat at home watching TikTok. And now they can go out, but they don't have the culture of, they're 20, 21, they don't have the culture of going to live shows. They just go rave. So if we talk about the future, we need to show these kids that live music is beautiful. And that's maybe one of the important goals for everyone in the industry.
It's really interesting that you said that, because one of my best friends is from Estonia, and as soon as she hit 18, she was like, I'm moving to London, I'm gonna meet the Libertines, this is the plan. So because she, at the time, because she's 34 now, but at the time, I don't know, I'm assuming the music scene in Estonia was completely different in terms, live music scene anyway, and she was just like, none of my favorite bands are going there, so, I'm gonna move to somewhere where all my favorite bands are based, and I have access to all of that. So, yeah, sorry, when you mentioned that, it just reminded me of my friends, so I thought I would share that story as well. So.
Cils, if you already have the mic, I'm very curious about how do you see the development of fresh new acts? Because if you have the gap in the audience, there might be also a gap with the artist. Or did the artist stay at home and do the bathroom stuff, or bedroom? Sorry, yeah, that was great. In the tub.
I guess I don't know. It depends. It depends. I think a lot of artists, touching on what Martin said, some of the stuff just isn't good. And then a lot of, and then there's too many as well, and a lot of it sounds the same. But I think, you do have some artists, some really special ones out there who are doing really amazing things, but just may not have the PR behind it or whatnot, or the support, or, I feel sometimes promoters just might not be taking risks, which is understandable because, we're at a time where, none of us are making as much money as we used to, or, ticket sales are not selling. So, you kind of want to go for the stuff that, even if it sounds like crap, has all the streams and the fan base. Yeah. So, which is a real shame, because I feel like, the real creatives are suffering now, and they're not getting those slots that they might have done in 2019 or before COVID, just because people are just trying to be safe. So I feel like that's my sort of battle at the moment, because I like to think my roster is quite left field in that sense, and people are like, oh, this is amazing, however. Like, there's always that however, and I'm like, I don't want to hear that however. I want to get that attachment that has the offer on it, but it is what it is. So yeah, I feel sorry for those sort of creatives.
Mentioning also like, let's say, social media, TikTok and stuff. I mean, there was a surge of like all these acts that were like doing stuff at home, you know, like massive numbers. And then, are they able to tour? You know, are they able to play live? Is that only an online thing?
Well, I don't know, because like half the time I don't even know who these people are. Like, I would get like emails like support, you know, when you get like your support mail outs and they're like, oh, X, Y, and Z is playing at this venue, like Coco, which is like 1,200 capacity. I'm like, who the hell is this? But like, I literally will be like, who the hell is this person? And then I'll listen to the music. I'm like, oh, okay, I've heard this whilst I was having a TikTok binge. I'm like, oh, okay, so this is their first time over here.
So selling tickets, was it sold out?
No.
No. Okay. Okay. Okay.
Some do, but like, you know, and some don't. And I think, you know, people are just like, well, they've got all these numbers on TikTok. Obviously, they're going to sell the tickets, and sometimes they get a reality check and find out that that's not the case.
No, but I think that's because us as agents and also promoters are looking a lot at stats these days, like looking at Spotify stats, YouTube stats, etc. And I think there are definitely cases where you have an artist that we had an example that we were working with Tove Lo, the Swedish pop star, and when she had her first hit, and it was at the top of the charts in the UK, and like we tried to book her shows, like we always like postpone her London dates all the time, even though she had millions of streams that the fans didn't really connect. Her song might be added to different playlists on Spotify, but people listen. I think there's a difference in how you listen to music. Some people do only listen to playlists, and they actually don't. They have no idea who the artist is, and they actually don't care so much. For them, it's like listening to radio, and that's it. Whereas some fans are more dedicated. You have like hard numbers of people that actually where you can turn that into ticket sales, and even though like you might have 100,000 streams, that you will sell more tickets than the artists that have millions of streams, which is so it's I think it's so new to us still that it's hard to analyze those numbers, what it actually means in terms of ticket sales still. And I'm not sure if there will ever be a tool for that. I'm sure there will be at some point, some algorithm that can tell us.
Interesting. So one more option for some questions. Yeah, we have two. Yeah?
If they want.
Hello, I'm Luke from Svetovar with Roman. I was just saying that we've found that little things have changed, and rather than historically just taking bookings that agents have offered us and who's moving around, we've had to engage a little bit more with like who comes to our place. And now we search and we book people from SoundCloud who don't have agents or who don't even play gigs, but we know that that's who our crowd will engage with. So from our perspective, I think agreeable, everyone's got to do a little bit of extra work, but I think also as like a venue or a promoter, you've got to kind of have that more engaging attitude with the people who come, and also like take a little kind of responsibility about kind of like educating the crowd and having the conviction to book good stuff and not shit stuff just because it's going to make money. I mean, that as a concept is just crap, and then the consequences of that is your venue shit because you book shit stuff. So I think there's like a cycle where you can have a cool venue that books cool stuff and it gets known as a cool place, so then people want to go to cool places, and then they see something cool that they've never heard of before because their friends are saying it's cool. So there's this other cycle, I think, of it, you know, that you have to do.
This is really cool because this is actually developing new acts.
Exactly.
This is how we can get new headliners through right spaces that, you know, put effort into curating it right. Am I picking this right?
We're booking artists, and then we'll say, look, we can fly you over from Belgium and play. How much do you want? And they'll say, well, I don't know, I've never been paid for a gig before. And 200 kids come along and they're happy to pay, say, €5, because it covers all the costs, and the artist is happy to go, well, cool, I made a couple of €100. It was just my new step. And the kids are like, well, I can afford €5. This is great. I'll buy a few drinks at the bar, you know. So I know that doesn't necessarily help out agents and promoters. They're kind of talking about the low money. But I feel that's the kind of the entry point to making things happen. Just pushing 50, €100 gigs on people, saying, hey man, this band are great. Like, look how many views they've got on YouTube. I think kids look at it and go, that's just dry. It's crusty. And I don't know, like with Roman, he looks at a lot of like numbers with things, and I just find some of them numbers don't even add up. There's people with millions of views, and then like you book them, and there's like 50 people come. So I think a lot of the numbers are not true. You can look at it and go, that's just shit. And then,
Anybody who wants to add on this?
No, I think it's. I mean, what is interesting is what you're saying is very interesting. Also, with this particular venue that we're in as well, it feels like this is exactly the right type of place to educate the crowd, and also like the work that the guys are doing right here is amazing. When you create a venue where people go to a show, like go to the venue because they like being at the venue, rather than going to a venue just to see that band that they heard of, like to actually to be introduced to music that you had no idea about before, and also be introduced to music, to live music, and just to understand the power of it, like how what effect it can have on you as a kid. That's how I grew up, and like how I got into it, just going to shows and like being blown away by the atmosphere in that venue. And I think that goes a lot to not only to the promoters, but I think what we see in the UK a lot, where you have like promoters that are just renting the venue for that night, and they try to pick a venue that have the right type of crowd. But I hope that it's going to be more of that, where venues are more genre specific, like that you have the punk venues, or you have the dance clubs, and like I think that will benefit a lot as well, because you just want to go to a place where you know that you have that there are like-minded people there. And that's the community vibe needs to come back a little bit more, I think.
Exactly. Yeah, Vedran?
No, I just want to say that this is our next chance, because before pandemic it was really like I spent too much time like asking promoters, agents, I'm sorry, can you accept the lower fee to play in Croatia? And usually it doesn't have success. So after pandemic, of course, a lot of bad guys in the business disappeared. So what you are telling now is the way that we do it all our life, actually, directly with people, but this takes more time, of course. This is not going to happen like this. You have to build a scene, and it takes some time. But yes, I think this is the way to go through this crisis.
A little story. When I first started in promoting in 1977, it was obviously the year after punk, but there was a really good local. I was in Bristol, so we used to, we'd get a night. We'd always rent the venues, not on a Friday or Saturday night. We would get the venues for free, and we'd just put on local bands, and we knew exactly what pub, cafe, whatever to put a poster up in. And nearly every show we did sold out. We were doing like 500-600 people just on, and then we knew all the musicians as well. So it was a real community. So after a while, everyone knew that our shows were cool shows, and they were cheap to get into. And yeah, and I think we need to go back to a bit of that spirit. Yeah.
On that note, I think that we're getting to the point that we need to close this panel. But if there is any last questions, we can still take maybe one. Yes.
Okay, so what do you think about, because you said that people experience more through screens, they don't go out that much, and the kids especially, they're always on their phones and computers. So what do you think about, the artists, should they dig more into VR concerts, live concerts online, even though the pandemic is over, but still you can sell more internationally? If you like see your Spotify and see where you have audience, you can do something. It's not the same as live concert, but at least you can get some audience from there to hear you.
Well, maybe they shouldn't get into online concerts or VR, but they should use this data for advertising, you know, to advertise their music to fans in certain countries they want to be. And there are really great tools for that. On, I don't want to say it, but like Facebook advertising or Meta advertising is super great now. In fact, it is. And if we could connect this to Spotify, that would be mind-blowing. If we could advertise to listeners of certain bands or certain styles, the shows we promote on Facebook or Instagram, that would be boom. And it has to happen at some point, I think.
It's part. I mean, it's part of the mix, isn't it? I mean, you know, you should always do one of your shows should be streamed live because there's always going to be, well, hopefully you'll have fans who can't contemplate going to the show because they live, you know, 1,000 miles away. But as for being the main thing, no, that's not going to happen. I mean, it'd be interesting. Maybe VR will take off a bit more, but
Still going to take time.
but and all the real successes, of course, of the acts that are already really big. You know, your Juhlin and your whatever. But it's a little bit part of the mix. Yeah.
On that note, thank you so much to the audience, to the panelists, and of course Spin for having us all here in your beautiful Mukatse and Skopje. So see you around. Let's grab a coffee.